Welcome back to Gaming on the Block, folks. We are on episode 10, which means that we're celebrating. So me, Annie, and CSG, we were discussing, and it's been all right when we're doing all three of us, but we wanted to bring some extra spice to the podcast this time. And for that reason, we bought our good friend from Metaverse Express, Mona, on because she's very clever and she does things that we can't do when it comes to telling the news, talking about crypto gaming, and we're super excited to have her here. And I've been following you, Mona, for quite a while. Like I said, I saw your interviews that you did back in New York City for the NFT event. And I found it so refreshing the way that you do your content, the way you tell about crypto, the way you tell about gaming as well, which is really, really refreshing. And so I am super excited to have you here. Welcome to the cast.
Oh my gosh, I don't know what to do with all that, but thank you so much for having me. It's actually nice to put the names with the faces. I do stalk all of you as a reporter. That's my job, to stalk everybody. And I'm just so happy to be here and have this conversation and talk about big picture, small picture, and just cover all of our bases. So thanks for having me, and let's get this thing started.
Awesome. So Annie, again, how have you been, Annie? We'll do this little round circle thing. How have you been this week?
Yeah, all good, man. This week was a nice week. I had a chance to kind of catch back up on everything. Last week, I had about a half dozen interviews in Twitter Spaces that ended up consuming most of the week for me. And but this week was a little bit more of a relaxing one. So some really good projects that I've been starting to get into as well, which, as you all know, I love to do. So good week. A lot of interesting things happened this week in Web3 gaming, as seems to always be the case. So super excited to be here. Mona, really glad to have you on as well. As we mentioned at the start, really love your interview style and the work that you're putting in with a ton of different Web3 gaming creators. So TSG, how about you, mate? Yeah.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Always just having a bit of fun, balancing, trying to get Kieran on all of these AMAs, which Mona actually did a really, really good one. And Kieran actually, much respect and credit to you, Mona. Kieran came back. You came to me and you were like, yo, it was such a fun interview. Kieran also came back to me raving, being like, yo, that was the most fun interview I've ever had. We need to do more stuff with Mona. I was like, all right, cool. Let me see what we can do. Let me see what we can do. Cool. So, yeah. No, nothing but love there. Yeah, you absolutely smashed it. And we're absolutely going to be pushing that out and making sure that our community sees the great work that you do there as well. But all right, let's jump straight into it. The first conversation, actually, the first thing, Mona, talk to us a little bit about yourself and your story in this space. I feel like before we get into the hard topics, Will said he's kind of followed you for a bit. Myself and Annie have followed you for a bit as well. Again, I kind of told you off camera that this plan of Gaming on the Block, we actually did envision a fourth person with us, and the person that we were actually thinking about way back when was actually you. So having you here now is actually quite a fun little story. So talk to us about your journey in crypto, before crypto, how you got here, everything. Just a quick little rundown, if you could, please.
Well, of course. Well, I mean, I'm a broadcast news reporter. My background is news, local news here in Central Florida. Now in this space, I still do the same thing. I'm also a Web3 news anchor and the host of my newscast, Metaverse Express, on YouTube. And on Metaverse Express, Metaverse and Web3 related headlines and do deep dive interviews with builders and creators in the space. I got into crypto just on the swing trade of, I guess, entry point. And right away, I noticed there's not a lot of female presence. At that time, there was actually none, especially journalists. And I saw a huge need for facilitating information about Web3 and crypto and what is being built with the projects and the masses and the 99% or whatever, 90% of non-crypto natives who have no idea what is crypto, what is Web3, what is blockchain. And so I started the channel to do exactly that. I consider myself a facilitator of information between builders and projects and masses. And I try to bring a different angle to the table, because I think our, influencers, our gaming influencers, our crypto influencers do a fabulous job of informing our space. But I think the masses have been neglected, and that's why they have such a bad taste in their mouth when it comes to NFTs, when it comes to crypto. And I think if we want, mass adoption, we have to educate. We have to educate the masses. So when I come in, I try to leave the gameplay, because I know you guys and all the other influencers are covering that. And I'm trying to ask questions that I know general public would want to know. Is it safe? Where's the value? Is this chain ready? And that's really my goal. My goal is to bring the founders and let people hear from them, from the horse's mouth.
All right, Mona, the one thing I actually wanted to ask you was, we see a lot of people kind of coming in, like you had a reputable job as a news reporter, right? Why did you decide to come into the crypto space when, again, like truth be told, a lot of people in the Web2s, their first reaction is it's a scam. So how did you go from like a reputable job as a news reporter to coming into this and thinking, one, this is interesting, let me learn more about it, and two, let me use this to actually educate people instead of just going to the default of this is a scam, I don't want to get involved, so on and so forth. Like, was that an instant kind of transition for you? Like you saw the opportunity, or did it take some time for you to get educated to be open to this as well?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I mean, let me tell you, I look at my portfolio and I'm very transparent about it. When I talk about it to my friends, I mean, I look at my portfolio and it's down 30 grand. I can easily say crypto is a scam, but it wasn't until I went to events right after COVID, when I started really learning what is being built, at permissionless. I heard builders building this next iteration of the internet, and it's very rare that you can say in a lifetime you were a part of something being built from ground zero, right? And so it's fair game for all industries and all genres. If you're in film, if you're in gaming, if you're in music, if you're in news like me, it's fair game. You set the stage of how this thing is going to be built, or how your genre and your your arena is going to be built in this next iteration of the internet. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. So I'm here representing news and news media, because frankly, CNN is not here yet. I don't know why. Fox News is not here yet. And Gen Z and millennials, they're not going to watch news the way that Web2 folks are watching news. That's going to change. So it's your choice. Do you want to be a part of how this is shaped? Because this is the time to do it. But there are risks involved. There's risks in being an early adopter. So yes, it's easy to say it's a scam, but I am now educated on it. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to teach people what nobody taught me 3 years ago. And I had to learn things the hard way, if that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, Mona, that's really interesting that you had that sort of experience. It's been fairly similar for me as well. I'm not full-time Web3 yet, but definitely went through that process of learning and then finally realizing, I like to say, what is actually being built here. So we're glad to have you. The space certainly needs more credible journalists, and you're doing a great work here. So,
thank you. Likewise. You guys too. Likewise.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things you talked about is how you were able to really understand what was being built, and you attended permissionless and some of the other conferences, and you've been interacting with people online. One of the best ways that I think crypto and Web3 in general build is in the open and transparently with their communities. And so the hallmark of that, I would say, is the whole concept of a DAO. And for those that are listening that may not be super familiar, a DAO stands for a decentralized autonomous organization. Big fancy way of saying we've got a group of people that are building together, that are making decisions about the future of a project that's being started or that's in progress. And we have different mechanisms that we're able to use to facilitate that. Really, it runs through the blockchain in general, but DAOs, I think, have a mixed reputation right now. There's questions about the overall efficacy of them. How effective are they? There are pros and cons, like any other organizational structure, to building with a DAO. And in the interview that you had with Kieran this past week, also in the one that I did, we both ended up talking about DAO structure, DAO governance, and the approach that this needs in Web3 gaming. And so I'm definitely interested in hearing your take from the people you've interacted with, the other builders in the space. Tell us about your perspective on DAOs, Mona, and then we want to get into a deeper conversation about it as a group.
Yeah, it's such a hot topic, and Kieran and I had a long conversation about this because I brought up the fact that I believe DAOs are what I call a blessing and a curse. Because while in one hand they present things like accessibility, transparency, community building, and it's really awesome to bring people in, I call it in pre-production, and have them be a part of the progress. But that also, as a producer, I say this as a producer, it also presents risks, right? I questioned, first of all, if a DAO was really decentralized. And I assume you guys know why I'm asking that. I also asked, can a DAO really manage things like game development, publishing, things that are the build the core value of your project? And in response to those questions, and especially the decentralization question, Kieran told me that Illuvium DAO is based on quadratic voting, which I didn't know that, which is actually very interesting. And you guys probably have to correct me if I'm wrong, but the way he explained it, he said, I guess the team holds 15% of the tokens and the VCs, or the bad guys, as he put it, the bad guys own 15% also, but they couldn't farm or stake their tokens to gain more. And he said that this was actually a model that initially this wasn't in place. This was a model that at the time, it was like a community member or something that presented it. And the VCs were actually not happy about it initially because they were coming in saying, well, we came in to farm our money. But it passed by the DAO. So that was very interesting. And I actually, Annie, want to hear your take on that before I move over to the second topic that was, putting the governance power of the game in the hands of the investors as opposed to the gamers. So let me turn it back to you. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we've talked about I think quadratic voting in maybe one of our casts earlier, and definitely agree. It's a very useful concept. Essentially, what it does is it limits the power of really large holders. So let's say you've got two holders, just to make it simple. One person has 100 tokens in a project, and another one has 9. The relative difference is more than 10x, right? It's almost, it's more than 11x between the two people. So if you had pure weighted voting, the person with 100 tokens has 11 times the weight, basically, of the person that has 9. With quadratic voting, you basically take the square root of the number of tokens. And so the person with 100 has essentially a voting power of 10. The person with 9 has a voting power of 3. And so the difference between 10 and 3 is only 3x. So you're minimizing the relative weight differential of the two holders so that smaller holders are essentially outweighted in the protocol. It's actually, for us in the US, it's a similar concept to the Senate in the US organizational structure with Congress, because it allows smaller states to have an equivalent say to larger states. It's kind of the same concept, just applied to token holders in a protocol. And so I think it's very interesting, and it is effective because it gives more weight to the individual than to the amount of tokens that they have. And I do think this is a really good way to make things more decentralized. There's regulatory questions. There's, maybe a risk of misaligned incentive questions when you have 30%, as you mentioned, of VCs and the team holding all of the tokens. It gives them an outsized say if you do pure voting. So I agree. I think it's a good approach. Will and TSG, I don't know if you all have thoughts on this one in particular. TSG, I know you've seen IIPs come out in illuvium over the past year too.
Take it away, TC. I'm just interested to hear like your thoughts on DAOs and how that impacts illuvium, how you're seeing that like first time with illuvium.
Yeah. Well, again, like I completely agree that there are pros and cons. Well, that's a very stupid statement to make because most things have pros and cons. But like the pros, the pros for me, like you say, Mona, like it's like it is decentralized. The thing is, and we've had this conversation multiple times. Like I believe in centralization and decentralization because no matter what, like a football team needs a captain, right? Like you need kind of someone to lead the way and say this is the direction that we're going. You need a North Star, so it can't be complete decentralization because that would be Lord of the Flies, right? Everyone would just go crazy. And even in Lord of the Flies, they had a leader, right? So you kind of get what I'm trying to say there. So like we see things like sometimes like the good thing about decentralization is it gives power back to the people 100%. The negative of that is sometimes the community isn't as informed as the people internally. So things like this, like we kind of saw how they fumbled. And I'm not going to say the community fumbled it, but the team and the community fumbled the capital raise that we were going to do because they were like, yo, we want to do it in this way. If they had approved it, they would have gone through. They would have got something. But because they wanted to change a minor thing in there that could have been amended, they were like, no, let's not do it. And they fumbled the bag. They didn't get the massive capital raise. And now the market has gone to shit. And it's just like, it's you kind of have to deal with those consequences, right? Whereas if it was a centralized institute, Kieran or anyone in the internal team could say, yo, we're pulling this right now. No one's going to say no. We're pulling the trigger. It's done. And that could have been done, right? We could have achieved a much larger capital raise. So again, there's pros and cons to it. One of the pros as well is, and again, this isn't necessarily a DAO thing, but I mean, there are implications with a DAO, but being able to work like globally, like remotely and globally, I think that's really, really cool because if you're in one country, the employees that you can have in a set kind of area is limited. So, and like and I think there's benefits to working in a global kind of market because obviously we're working in that with globalization right now. Limiting like a corporation or something to a singular like area, I think there's just a lot more cons than benefits, right? Like there's, for example, one of the benefits that I can think of is, and it might seem very like small, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it's actually very important, is cultural diversity. And I don't mean like, oh, you have like different races. Like, I don't mean that. I mean actual cultural diversity. People are growing up with different cultures. So if for something like illuvium where we're trying to take over the world, having people from China be like, yo, this is actually how we view things. This is how we consume product. People in India saying the same thing. People in Morocco saying the same thing. People in England, Spain, right? Having everyone kind of share how their consumers behave actually adds a lot of value to these conversations. Whereas if everyone was just Australian, that's just, again, there's limits to that. But then, again, the negative of that is maybe there's cultural differences that makes it hard for us, again, to agree on a set point. It's just this constant battle of like, it's always finding that balance, right? So I think overall, the benefits do outweigh the cons 100%. But it is a balancing act, which is what I'm finding. But again, as someone is my first time working in a DAO, or I wouldn't say working in a DAO, being a part of a DAO, I am very, very happy with it. And I think it's an amazing thing. And just one last thing that I'll say, and then I'll throw it to you, Will, is regulations. So the pros of regulations with DAOs is there is none. like it's unclear as of now, right? It's very open and we're kind of leading the way, so there's nothing really stopping us right now. The con is we don't know how strict they're going to be when it actually hits. So the best we can do, again, is find that balancing act of being in front of it, talking with the regulators, explaining, educating the regulators, showing them that we're on their side, so they don't come down and just cut us off, right? I'm trying to be that nice guy and be like, yo, this is what it is. This is actually how it works. And hopefully the regulation kind of assists us and regulates us more than just cuts us off. So again, I think the whole DAO thing is a balancing act. It's weighing slightly more the pros than cons, but it is a balancing act based on my experience there.
And how
Again,
how it's structured. As long as it's attached to a token, it's very critical to make sure it's structured right.
Agreed. And then we'll go into the conversation that you guys were about to have as well about having investors making decisions on gaming side of things, and that's where I know Annie's helped us out a lot with his ECG model, and it's something that I believe in as well. So I'm definitely down to kind of dive in deep into that. But Will, what's your take on all of this, man?
Well, I'm taking in all of the info you guys are saying. What I'm here for this conversation with the DAOs with open ears, honestly, rather than me myself talking, because you guys are way more educated when it comes to DAOs than I am. Just like you, Mona, you're taking the news reporter's perspective.
We're not. Just so you know, we're not.
Just like you. I'm figuring it out just like you.
I'm taking a gamer's perspective, so I'm like more interested in the gaming perspective and what that means for the average gamer. And when you guys are talking about the quadruple voting, is that what it's called?
Quadratic.
Yeah, sorry. We don't have that word in Sweden. Quadratic voting. Annie, what cons that does that bring, in your opinion? Because I do see the pros of where the differences aren't that great. Obviously, an obvious con is if you bring in a whale, for example, he won't have as much power, etc., which could also be a pro. What do you think are the cons with the quadratic voting?
Yeah, I think it leads to the same sort of general problem with, I would say, democracy overall, right? Where democracy leads to everyone, whether they're well informed, whether they're engaged in the project or the protocol, whether they have opinions that are reasonable or not. Everyone has effectively the same weight, the same sway in a sort of pure democracy. That's why pure democratic governments don't exist and really are a terrible idea. So I think you really benefit from projects that are using like a representation type of approach, where it's not just ask everyone and every person has one vote on everything, because again, you can't really convey all the information that's needed for a critical decision to every person in a DAO, and it lends itself more towards, I would say, like soundbite voting and popularity contests. And so that's the risk of a more decentralized model. I do really tend to favor these protocols that set up a small council or a leadership group that's voted in, and effectively all of the holders have the ability to say, these are the individuals that we want to run the project, and we're going to invest them with the ability, they're going to get all the confidential information that you can't just throw out to the open for everyone to consume. They're going to be having very deep and detailed discussions, because not all of us can do that and sit on calls for dozens of hours a week. And so we're going to give some people that we think are the right ones the ability to make those decisions for us. I think that really lends itself well to governance structures. You get some of the best of both worlds with specialized individuals, but also when someone starts to go a little bit outside the will of the broader community and all the stakeholders in the project, you can very easily rein them back in by virtue of voting them out, in the next cycle or next election. So I think that's one of the big risks with this decentralization. Quadratic voting can also, to be fair, it can be gamed if you want to go through the process of creating hundreds of wallets and separating your individual tokens from a project into unique wallets. Really, the fact that you've got gas fees to do that makes it not so interesting to people to do. But one risk point here is, once we get to layer twos that have very scalable solutions, I'm more involved with Ethereum, but if you're on a chain that has minimal or no gas fees, essentially
it could be
quadratic voting loses its power, because you can easily create hundreds of wallets and just have each one do the voting on your behalf. And so there's technical limitations to this that will eventually come up.
It's definitely time constraints, and like you'd kind of hope someone with that many resources isn't going to waste their time like that, but or they could get people to do it for them.
You could build bots to do that on your behalf. Again, it's not really worth it today with the technology where it is, but it is a risk eventually. Now you have the other possibility. If you have KYC, you can prevent that, right? Because each person only then can be assigned to one wallet, and so those other wallets that aren't KYC'd, you lose the ability to use them in voting. So there are solutions. Don't want to get into maybe all of that, but I think for now it's an overall good structure. But with that said, Mona, I want to come back to your other point, because I think for me this is the bigger risk with DAOs, specifically in Web3 gaming, right? Which is we're all of a sudden having investors in the project making decisions on all of the critical topics as it relates to gameplay and community, as well as the economic model. So I think you hit the nail on the head with this is the fundamental problem. So tell me more about what kind of led you to that as an issue that you see.
I mean, I even said it to Kieran. I said, Web3 games as a product, it's not sticky. It doesn't stick, because I can easily just drop, buy all my assets, build them up, and just liquidate and peace out, right? You have to keep me in. How are you going to keep me in long term? We're talking 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And it really comes down to building, just like he said, just like you guys know, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You have to make a fun game. And if that's the only way people are going to stay, if the game is fun. But that reflects on what the developers are building. That has a lot to do. That has everything to do with what the developers are building and how it's being built, right? So then do you put those decision-making, in the hands of the masses, or where do you draw the line there? And I mean, Kieran, brought up something that actually I didn't think about it, because I don't have that insight. He said, with a grain of salt, I quote, and we don't want to offend anyone, but he said that he doesn't believe these early adopters that are here are real gamers, right? And they're ILV token holders with governance who may not even care as much about what is the game itself or the fun of the game, right? They're just here to pump the token and get out, right? But he did say that he believes the real gamers are coming. And he said in the meantime, the VCs have actually helped in this area, because I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, Illuvium 0 was actually proposed by the VCs because they saw the long-term vision, right? But he did agree and did say that one of the biggest challenges he has, or the team has, is communicating the development process with the community today. And specifically those who care way more about the token than the game itself. So
I just want to jump in and clarify when he says like the real gamers aren't here. I think, like, again, just another way to look at it is not saying that we're not real gamers, but I mean, like, if we are invested in, like, let's say there's 100% of something. Let's say we are investing, maybe we're 50% investors, 50% gamers, right? Like, once the game is launched, everything is out, the people come in, do not care about the token, they're 100% only thinking about the game. So that's what I think he means when he says real gamers.
I agree.
So it's not like we're not gamers. It's just, again, like, people that don't care about the token at all. It's like the people that actually just want to play the token.
Listen, I said no offense, man. I knew this was going to be a sensitive topic. Now I'm going to get all the hate. Mona thinks we're not gamers.
Who thinks we're yo, look at this.
No, I totally get what both you are saying. I'm not offended, but TSG, don't take it so hard, man. And anyhow, I think it's very true. Like, there's not people who are 100% devoted to just the game. Like, the people are coming now, they're devoted to the token, they're devoted to the economy, to everything. They have bags in the game, and that's what we're seeing right now. It's not 100% true gamers, because they don't care simply like 100% about the game. Like, if I'm playing Call of Duty, I don't care what the stocks are, if the stocks are going up or down for Activision and those who are creating those games. But that's very true. I think it's very interesting, like a conversation, how much you let the gamers decide and how much just let the developers and the business people do their thing, and the gamers just have to like trust the process. I want to throw that over to you, TSG. I think I think like deep down, I feel as like, yes, let them do their thing, but also it's like I played games and I haven't seen changes for quite a while, and the games are losing the gamers, and people are losing interest because they don't listen to the gamers. So there's like there's got to be some sweet spot there. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I found my key theme for this cast today, and I think that's balance. I think there needs to be a balance, right? Of 100%. Like, again, let the experts, being the developers, do their thing. Like that's what they are doing. Let them do their thing. But at the same time, we need to give the gamers a chance because they're the ones playing the game. If we completely ignore them, it's absolutely ridiculous. And it's something that actually I really like what Annie's kind of brought this up again, and I mentioned it before about his ECG model, right? So I think this seems to be the way that I would like to move forward. The same way that we have our governance right now, where we bring up, we vote in our 5 people, our 5 representatives, as you are the guys making these big calls. But having a singular council, it's the same way like in any government, we have a Department of Health, a Department of Education, a Department of so-and-so, right? You don't just have one single group of people to make a call on everything. Because one, there's no way there's no way they're going to be educated enough to make that educated decision in these little areas. So Annie's ECG, I believe he's going to bring it up, and I'll put it up as well. But
Yeah,
there we go.
I want Annie to explain this because this is
Annie.
very intriguing.
Yeah, so I'm really glad to share with you guys this model, as TSG mentioned. I call the ECG model, and it's really based on trying to get the incentives right for gamers, for investors, and for those that are more broadly interested in the community of a project. And by that I mean people that are influencers or guild leaders. You take your pick. There are other kind of roles that go into making a game successful, whether it's a game that has an esports model, it's an MMO, or it's a first-person shooter game. In all those cases, you have different people that are needed to make sure that that game continues to bring in more players, the revenue source is sustainable. And so, as TSG mentioned, the current structure for Illuvium and most DAOs in Web3 gaming they took a model where DeFi protocols invented it. And they said, okay, if MakerDAO created this concept of a council, we're going to use that same approach. And then everyone that owns the token is able to vote on everything. The problem with that is exactly what I think you addressed, Mona, that these are not gamers, and they don't really have and really shouldn't have opinions on gameplay concepts, especially because oftentimes what's in the best interest of an investor in a game in the short term is not going to be in the best interest of the game in the long term, because the gamers want the game to be sustainable and entertaining, and investors by definition want to extract as much value from the product as possible. And those two are often in direct contradiction with each other. And so what I propose is a newer model that, like TSG said, focuses on the different stakeholders and different elements of a gaming ecosystem with 3 core pillars, one focused on the economic side of the game. This is absolutely still essential. And so in this case, you would have the same investor class, people that hold tokens that represent essentially shares or equity in the project, that they're involved in governance. So this ensures that you meet the regulatory requirements of those individuals to hold the tokens effectively. But you also have 2 other pillars that are then added. And the people that are voting on these sort of concerns are not the ones that hold the tokens. They're individuals that are involved in other ways. And so my proposal on the community front is people that hold specific NFTs that are indicative of them being involved in the community, whether they're content creators or whether they're a guild officer for a guild that's part of that game ecosystem, whether there's someone that is a journalist, right? So Mona, you might get a POAP or some other NFT for having done an interview with Kieran that indicates you're now part of the broader Illuvium community. You should have some say in how Illuvium is managing those relationships with those that are not necessarily playing the game, but that are in the broader ecosystem. And then on the gameplay side, I think this is pretty straightforward too. You can also easily see who has NFTs, whether it's a soulbound NFT, if you've done some sort of a KYC process, or even if you haven't, you've got an account that's linked to an individual that NFT can't be traded. So this person is the one that is playing this game, and this is their account. So you can see played hours, you can see who has specific NFTs. Maybe you captured a bunch of alluvials in the game. You can see who won tournaments. You can see who's playing in tournaments, who's doing PvP, who's on the leaderboard, in all of these unique ways that you really couldn't do publicly in Web2 gaming. You couldn't see all that information tied to a person.
Yeah.
You can see all of that now with the blockchain, because you can see tokens. You can give out all of these NFTs essentially instantly and basically for free, to allow you to give people that visibility. And so my proposal is that the individuals that are voting on gameplay should be ones, and you should have a separate gameplay council that is focused on the gameplay elements, a separate community council that's focused on community elements, and a separate economic council that's focused on the investor class. And then where you have questions that span multiple of these councils, you have a final Supreme Council that allows you to bring them together, have representatives from each of those three that are included to come up with a final decision on these broader questions that need to be determined. So that's the model that I proposed. Again, I think we still need to see, we need to see some communities adopt this because it's not going to be perfect the first go around. But I think it gives us a better set of incentives to the right people in a gaming ecosystem.
Yeah.
Sold. Where do I sign?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's super well thought out, man. Again, it's like it doesn't make sense for investors, like you say, whose main purpose is to extract in the short term, to be making these long-term gaming decisions, which is going to affect like how the community works and the long-term longevity of a game and a game studio. So 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say we could talk about this all day, but TSG yelled at all of us and said we need to move on.
That's right. I gotta get off my soapbox at times.
Yeah, it's a poke. It's a poke.
No, we have to though. Like
you offended him, Mona. He gets this way. It's because you offended him.
I know. I already told him he's not a gamer, so he's probably never inviting me back again ever.
Oh man, no.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
No. It's all right. So let's actually move on to the whole free mints and paid mints for Web3 gaming studios. Annie, do you want to lead us into this conversation? Like, because obviously we've been a part of a couple of mints recently with Civitas, and I know there's a couple others that you've been involved with that were free mints. Talk to us and lead us into this conversation, man.
Yeah, just to set it up, we're seeing, I think, kind of a bifurcation in the Web3 space where you've got some projects that are taking we want to just build the community at all costs, and we're giving free mints to anyone that wants them. And then you see others that are saying, we want to know who our paid players are for our game, and therefore we want to encourage people that want to be here to play. We're going to have paid mints that have them essentially buying NFTs of some kind, or whatever that looks like. Maybe there's a subscription model. Doesn't matter the model. But I want to get y'all's takes. What's the differences in value? Because I don't think there's a right answer, right? I've seen great projects that have done both just in the past couple of weeks. So yeah, pros and cons between free and paid mints for games. And Will, maybe we'll start with you and see. I know you've got some different opinions from your Web2 background on this.
Yeah, I think when it comes to gaming, it should be free. I'm coming from like a business background. I don't like giving away free stuff. Not at all. I think people don't see the value in it. But when it comes to gaming, I think generally it should be free. And then you charge for other things. You charge for DLCs. You can charge for other NFTs in the game. You charge for the game itself. But for when it comes to the mints and being able to play the game, even maybe in the first place, I think it should be free. That's my short opinion. That's what I believe. Mona, what are your thoughts on that? I'll shoot the ball over real quick.
I mean, like Annie said, there's no wrong answer here. I personally have this. I love the saying, those who pay will pay attention, right?
Yeah.
And those who are doing it for free are doing it. We just came out of this DAOs conversation and how we set the language when token becomes a priority, right? So those who are doing it for free are doing it partially to flip, right? They're not really engaged. They haven't really truly invested in anything. But there's always the subsegment of people who are into what the mission is, and those people will come in and they'll upgrade at some point. Though regardless, on the project side, there still needs to be, whether it's paid or it's free, there still needs to be utility attached to it. So you still need resources, discounted tickets, education, free content, whatever it is you want to attach it to. And at the end of the day, my friend, nothing is free. That costs something for the project. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. And yeah, I agree. I think, again, going back to my whole balance thing, right? Like, there's pros and cons to each thing. The free, like putting it out free, it's cool. It's funny because most of the time I would say, I think free is the way to go. But just because it is like the whole NFT space and the whole like Web3 space right now is, even though we are in a bear market, it is still a very speculative space. So like what Mona mentioned, even if free is like, it's a weird one because people do it. So even though, like Annie, your point of a community, is that a genuine community, or is it kind of a false appearance? And I think we live in this world of appearances with fake followers, fake likes, this and that, ways to kind of gain percent. So it's a tough one. I actually don't like paying for it. Again, I've made this abundantly clear multiple times, and as much as I'm super excited for Civitas, I'm not even gonna lie to it. I think what the mint was like 0.3 ETH. I think that's like high. Again, it just is like, I'm not gonna lie and sugarcoat and be like, oh, I like the project. I do like the project, but I think the mint was a bit high. But again, the benefit of that is, like you say, Mona, it's if they can get someone like me who doesn't want to pay that for a game that's not even out yet, but it shows that I am genuinely interested. And so it shows a genuine community. So it might irk my wallet 100%, but it definitely shows the world that we do have a community, and these are the people that are really about it. And they can see who has these NFTs, come to us for feedback and things like that, and can really engage with us on that level. So there is the pro to that as well.
And I just want to say this. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to say this. That is exactly where and when the DAO is created too, by the way. Right at that mint, you are selecting who is going to be in your DAO. So choose wisely. That's what I say.
100%, exactly. And so with the free mint as well, again, it could be doable if there was a limited amount, because again, value, if it's unlimited or like a crazy amount, what's the value in it? Right, like the demand is going to be high because it's
of course
the demand should be high because it's free, and if the supply is high as well, like what's the value? It just is. I get
where you're all saying 100%, and like I said, like coming from from the business perspective, and like for sure coming from the studio's perspective, it makes sense. I love that expression myself, like whoever pays attention. I've used that so many times myself. However, I do believe that when we're talking about bringing, we're talking about like there's not 100% gamers in right now. No, because you have to pay someone for an NFT, and if we want to bring masses in, the gamers, they're not going to be paying. Like, it doesn't matter. They won't be paying to get in to buy an NFT, whatever it is, because that's the whole scam to them. But if you show them like, hey, join us, it's free, and then there's like boom, 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 now you can purchase NFTs and you can purchase in-game stuff, and like, oh, now I understand what this whole NFT thing is about. I thought it was just a cool way like to show that I'm really cool. I put it up on social media, there's no utility, it means nothing, but actually what it is, now that we're seeing it in gaming, there's some utility to it. So instead of, you know, grinding for this sword, I can pay a little bit of money, I can get this sword, or I can get this character, I can get this player, whatever it might be. And I think that's the way to get rid of the skepticism that we see in Web2 gamers, and great way to onboard them, because their opinion won't change if things don't change, in my opinion. And the whole scam thing is because they don't want to spend money and lose it. So show them what it's all about.
Yeah. And before I throw it to you, Annie, as well, because you haven't given your perspective, and I want to make clear that Civitas is a free-to-play experience. I wasn't forced to buy it to play the game. It's just I chose to, but it still was a thing. It's the same way that I kind of acted with Land, but obviously with Illuvium Land, but I was way more invested in Illuvium than I am in Civitas. So I kind of felt a little bit different. But again, I'm very bullish on what Civitas is building. But Annie, what's your thoughts on this, man? The whole free and paid, because I believe you've actually participated in both sides, like recently, right? Like, what's your experience?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I'll use like Civitas and Azra just because they both happen to launch within a week of each other, and it's been a really interesting discussion. What I would say is the Web3 native NFT folks that I talked to, their current perspective is Azra's done better because they had a full mint. The floor price is stayed pretty solid and pretty high, and therefore that was a more successful mint. And again, I love both projects. Full disclosure, I'm supportive of both. They have great teams that are building good content. My take is a little different. I actually think what for a free mint is in the game. Instead, you're bringing in folks that are going to basically extract value from the project, and as such, you have no idea yet who your potential market is, and you also need to ensure that now you have a clear way of working with the community to explain, here's how we're going to be requiring you to put money into the ecosystem. Otherwise, it's not going to be sustainable. And so my semi-hot take is that if you don't have a clear sense of your value as a project, you're not in a really well-positioned place yet to be able to launch a game, because the community that you've built so far is not necessarily there for gameplay. Now, some of them probably are, but you don't know who they are at this point. And so my argument is that you need to have a plan to make that transition, and you need to have that before you start going too far down the road, especially with free mints. And so I think that long term, what we have to do is transition from the NFT trading, flipping approach and mindset into Web3 gaming, which is no different than any other product. You've got to have product market fit. You've got to have good economics when you go to the market to ensure it's going to be sustainable. So again, I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it, but you need to make sure that those are the topics you're addressing as a founder and as a builder.
Right.
Yeah,
you're setting a standard too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's move on to our general Web3 gaming news, and we can wrap this up. We're coming up to an hour now, so I feel like this is a good time to kind of wrap up.
This is what happens every time, man. This is literally my dilemma. Like, there's just so much to talk about, and time goes so fast. And then I try to edit this thing. I'm like, oh my God, it's an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Where do I cut?
We used to have so many like topics, and we're like, we realized like one or two topics actually covers the entire thing. So yeah,
seriously, the struggle is real, man.
100%. Right. Annie, did you were the one that wrote the Web3
Yeah,
gaming news?
I can run
Yeah,
through
do you
it.
want
So
to
what I'd
run
like
through
to
it?
do, yeah, what I'd like to do today is I'll share the quick overview, and any of y'all that want to give a hot take or a reason take, whatever, feel free to jump in. So, general Web3 gaming news for the week. Firstly, Google has announced they're partnering with Coinbase.
Woo,
Right?
Amazing.
woo.
Yeah.
Web 2 starting to get on the boat a little bit more each week. I feel like we say this every single week. There's some
Yeah.
giant that's like, oh, we need to be
Yeah.
exploring NFTs
Yeah.
or tokens or whatever.
Literally.
You know what we should do? We should go back. One of us should go back and every week just take a clip of all of these big companies joining us, like every week, and have like a highlight of the progression. I reckon that'd be hilarious because every week, man, every week. And so
And we should
Google's
also do like before and after, like for example, Google, by the way, in 2018, they had an ad, or they came out that nobody can put crypto ads on their platform.
yeah.
Guess we had a change of hearts. But anyways, so like
So
their
much
take
like
before and after.
Yeah. There's so many of these. I love them. Absolutely. Yeah.
Statements that didn't age well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a new that's a new segment. We have the general news, and then we have the
Statements that
statements
didn't age
that
well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
So let's talk. We talked for a minute about regulation. So regulation is definitely coming. SEC announces I think we're at a request for information stage, is my understanding, with YugaLabs. So the company that owns Bored Ape Yacht Club and CryptoPunks. Seems so. There's a couple interesting thoughts here. Firstly, YugaLabs is actually a U.S. incorporated organization. I know they're structured as a DAO from a governance standpoint, but legally they're a U.S. entity. And I think the reason that we see this is not the NFTs, it's because they issued ApeCoin. And it seems like a lot of the focus is on the potential securities questions around that token structure. Mona, you're shaking your head. What
We're
are your
gonna get
thoughts on
into this,
one?
but are we going to Google, or are we done with Google? Because
we can go back to Google. Did you want to say some shit about Google?
Yep.
You're the guest. Anything you want.
No, I definitely want to talk about YugaLabs too, because that's a bunch of bullshit. But but I mean, I guess if we go back to Google, I just wanted to say, if you're a macro-minded investor, this is actually exciting news, because long term, this could benefit crypto at large. It'll bring, I mean, it's Google, right? Though it's a blessing and a curse again, because it's big tech coming in, it's also inevitable. It will bring validity into the space. It'll bring an adoption spur, because everyone who has Google, they're like, oh, if Google says we should do it, I guess it's safe. So we're all going to do it. But as Google, when this was announced, Google said that they need to make it frictionless. I mean, we all have been talking about frictionless, and we're still some ways to frictionless, right?
Yeah.
I don't think this is a step that opens up the wallets by all means to the masses just yet. But at least what Google's done here is to start that process. It's a step in the right direction. And lastly, I just want to say, guess who this is going to put pressure on? Amazon.
Yeah.
So they'll be next. They'll definitely be next. That's all I want to say.
Yeah.
That's
and before you go into the whole YugaLabs bullshit thing, the whole Google thing is that Google's working with Coinbase for its cloud services. So like Google Drive, all of these things, like these things that you want to pay for with cloud services, you can pay for them with fiat, obviously, and as well as crypto. That's the big thing. YugaLabs bullshit. All you.
Wait, why is it all me? You want me to go first again?
I mean, you said it was bullshit. You were shaking your head. I'm down.
This makes me so mad. I'll present both sides on this. Okay.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, I don't know what parts of ApeCoin is security and what parts aren't. I don't know. But technically, these folks are investigating a monkey JPEG as security. Are you fucking kidding me? It's a monkey JPEG, right? We don't we still don't know the whole security situation. But the thing is, they're the ones who haven't really made it clear to us either, right? Are NFTs or JPEGs a security? Are baseball card securities? Is the art on my wall a security? Are antiques a security? Of course fucking not, right? So do monkey pictures really need a $10,000 filing? Hell no. But here's the devil's advocate, which we kind of need to maybe consider. Yes, YugaLabs did take investment money from A16Z and many people to build their metaverse, right? And in that metaverse, a financial asset is a Bored Ape. So the metaverse has some sort of value to it, and the Bored Ape is some type of associated with that. So it kind of does feel like a Howey test, but it just shows we need better laws, because we're talking about a damn monkey picture. Guys,
I think
it's a monkey picture.
I don't think the monkey picture alone is the thing. I think it's like what you said, like the Howey test and all these other implications of it. And again, I think it's like Bored Apes is a very easy target just because they are the biggest as well. So
of course,
I think they're trying to make an example out of them, or even trying to use them as like, because we understand how regulation and laws work, right? If there's a precedent for it and it's been done once, that kind of leads the way for everything in the future as well. So I think it's actually quite pivotal to see how this plays out, and how they kind of handle this, because this could set a precedent for everything else moving, not everything else, but a large variety of things moving forward. So yeah, I'm not super clued up on the Howey test and there's the 4 forks of it, right? I'm not sure, like I have an understanding of it, but I'm not super clued up on it, so I can't say it off the top.
Could they? I'm wondering, could they go more toward the metaverse and the investments that are happening and the gains of the assets that are happening in there, and go from that angle?
I mean,
Hit
they
them from
could,
that angle.
Yeah, they could, but I think this is probably restricted to ApeCoin at the moment, from the security side, because no one's received value yet from anything on the metaverse side. I mean, unless you want to argue like other side land deeds, trading, but I think that's a smaller target. A couple of things that were really interesting to me with this filing. So Gary Gensler, I think it was on CNBC. He was interviewed, and it was wild, but also highly informative. So they asked basically, why are you going after YugaLabs? And his answer essentially amounted to, because the question was posed, why are you going after YugaLabs and not Nancy Pelosi for insider trading, and not
so good.
like, and not like BlackRock and all these other massive players that are way beyond, orders of magnitude higher in terms of dollars than Yuga. And his answer was basically, because if we go after them, we're going to lose, because they have enough money to fight back. And like, that's okay. So point one, like, where is the consumer protection approach in that? We're only going to go after people that are small enough not to have a chance to defend themselves. But point two, I actually do think that this is probably, it's undoubtedly to set a precedent in the space, but it's probably better for anyone in Web3 that they are going after YugaLabs, because YugaLabs has not just their own sizable war chest. They also presumably have done their due diligence from a structural standpoint. And they've got a lot of really big players backing them. So, Mona, you mentioned A16Z and plenty of other VCs. If there's anyone that I would feel relatively comfortable about being a target of the SEC, an organization like this that has the war chest behind to be able to fight it out, I actually would almost prefer to see some of this go to court, to some sort of a final position, so that we can have some regulatory clarity in the space. Because if we don't, what's going to happen is they're going to decide, oh, okay, YugaLabs too well capitalized for us to go after now. Now they're going after mom and pop developer with a 10-person team, and all of a sudden they've got no chance of fighting back against the SEC. So everyone's just been asking, give us clarity in the space.
Yeah, I mean, if Gary Gensler, aka Mr. Burns, did his job instead of playing influencer. He creeps me out, guys. He looks like Mr. Burns. Will, do you know who Mr. Burns is? I want people in the
I
comment
don't.
section
But
put what?
Is,
Okay,
is
I
that the guy
want
from
people in the
Simpson,
comment
though?
section
Yeah,
to
Simpsons.
put,
Simpsons.
Okay,
post
okay,
a
I got
picture.
you.
Excellent.
Post a picture of Mr. Burns and tell me he doesn't look
Oh.
like Mr. Burns. It's so creepy. I can't even listen to him. But if he actually did his job instead of trying to be an influencer, which he's been trying to be an influencer with the whole Kardashian stuff, we would, and actually collaborated with tech companies and really brought innovation, we wouldn't be in this situation. But Mr. Burns needs to go. I'm sorry. He's creepy. He's scary.
Yeah. The thing
I'll
with
say
the
this.
thing with Kardashian was pretty funny though. It's just like, yeah, it's wild. It's wild what's happening. Sorry, Will.
We
I
have to
think in
show
general
Will
that we're
Mr. Burns.
seeing that we're seeing more like legal entity, like government and whatever SEC is. I guess it's some kind of. I'm not from the U.S., but it's some
Securities.
government. Yeah, right. I think it's a good thing. Like, it might seem bad at the moment, but I do believe if there's more regulations coming, they're going after them. We'll see, like, things will settle. Because I think many times in history, we've seen things be like the Wild West, which kind of Web3 has been, and people don't know what to do, and the people in charge don't know what to do. And then things get grounded and they get set in stone. And that's when we see the masses come. So, and it's all hype. It's all PR. We see more people will look towards Web3 and it'll become more mainstream. So, bad in the moment, but I think it'll be good long term.
Yeah, agreed. Again,
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Balance.
Yeah. So speaking of balance, next point of news, we've seen a major uptick in the number of projects in Web3 that are announcing partnerships. And this is specifically in the gaming space. So I've seen just in the past month alone, several dozen really reputable projects that I think are actually building good content begin to announce partnerships, whether you're looking at like Star Atlas, Civitas, Illuvium, Shrapnel.
Sandbox.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're starting to see these games that are now well into the building phase say, oh, okay, we want to have some partnerships. Any thoughts on what this means for the space in general?
I mean,
Mona,
it's
maybe
just, Mona? Yeah.
You have to build this with collaborations. There's no other way. You can't do this alone. Animoca is my favorite company. I mean, the level of collaborations those guys do is unreal. I really want to interview the founder and just ask, like, how do you keep up with these collaborations? They must have, like, I don't know, 20 a month. But truly, there's no other way to do this. You have to, and at some point, I mean, you're going to see even collaborations with centralized companies. Look at Polygon and Disney, right? It's inevitable. It's going to happen. So I'm pro collaborations as long as it's the right collaboration and as long as we maintain the core value of what is being built and the right collaborations are done. I'm absolutely pro. Why not? Bring it.
Yeah. And like, obviously, like you say, we're seeing more and more. It just makes sense, man. Again, like I've had a few people, I've seen a couple of tweets of people, saying, I want the bull market back. Honestly, I don't. Not for the time being anyway. Like, I'm happy to see everything in this bear market. It seems like, again, I kind of mentioned speculators, but it does seem like the majority of speculators are kind of gone right now. And it's just people building. So seeing these real collaborations build, these partnerships build, it makes sense to me. And again, it seems like it's the obvious thing that's going to happen, right? Like, we truly believe that this is the future. We're building the future. Like you said, Mona, at the very start of this, it was like, how often do we get the chance to be a part of something that's really shifting, like, the world, right? Shifting society forward. And that's what I see happening here. So with these, like this uptick in partnerships, it seems obvious to me. It seems like it was bound to happen, especially in this bear market where, like, builders are building and not just speculating. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me in the least at all. Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Will? Have you seen anything?
I think it's good. Like, you nailed it. Like Mona said, we need partnerships. We need collaborations. That's how we grow. When you grow, I grow. It's that kind of thing. The more collaborations, the better. And the more, like we talked about, we see more Web2 games or Web2 companies coming into Web3. And Mona mentioned earlier as well, Google coming in, that puts pressure on Amazon. And we talked about this in the past. Epic Games coming in and like really pushing Web3 puts more pressure on Steam. And once again, it will be exciting to see like how that statement ages, like them being against NFTs and them being against Web3 and Minecraft, not the least for me as well. Like it's exciting to see what their stand will be in a few years time. So partnerships, I'm all for it.
Yeah, it blows me away, Annie. Before you move on, it actually blows me away how early we are. Like again, in the bull market, we thought, yo, this is the one that we're really like is really gonna hit. But we're still so early. Like personally, again, this is pure me just guessing. I still think we're 5 to 10 years away of like seeing it really, really take off. But in the next 5 years, like, yo, that's what I'm thinking. I think the next cycle is really going to be the one that really shoots us off. Maybe not like globally, like the masses, but definitely a large percentage of the masses are definitely going to come on board at the next run, I think. But yeah, Annie, I'll leave that with you.
Let's make it seamless first. We got to make it seamless and safe and secure and invisible.
And that's what we're building. That's what we're building right now. I feel like with layer 2s and the fiat on ramps and off ramps, I think all of the technical stuff is what's being built right now. But yeah,
fully agree. And the last point for this week that we want to highlight in our roundup is Magic Eden. So this is very late breaking. Going in, I think it was Friday. They announced late U.S. time they are suspending creator royalties on NFTs on their platform. And so very interesting. There was a lot of discussion about this over the last about 48 hours at the time of recording now. And essentially their position is, frankly, they're losing market share to other exchanges. And I think this is somewhat reactive to that. But I think it calls into question a lot of the practices that we see and things that we take for granted in the space. Because the companies and organizations that are building, they still have flexibility. It's still software. And so even though a lot of our content is on chain, you're always running through these various infrastructure layers and intermediaries, and they have a pretty big influence on you. And so a lot of dialogue within a number of projects that essentially they're losing their royalties, which in many cases, they base their economic sustainability on secondary sales transactions in the marketplace. A lot of pushback. After a number of the discussions yesterday, they also announced that in the short term, they're suspending their own take from trading on their platform until they can find a better sustainable solution for this. So very interesting to watch because they're one of the larger players in the space. Anyone that's been watching for a bit knows Magic Eden. And so want to get, this may be news to some of you based on the expressions I'm seeing, but it's a huge topic that I think we're going to explore a lot more over the coming months in the space.
Wait, so you're saying that the artists aren't getting royalties and Magic Eden aren't getting cut either?
Correct. Zero fees. So they've made it optional, I should say.
What prompted this, Annie?
I'm sorry?
What prompted this?
So there was a lot of discussion, I think, on crypto Twitter and in the space over the past couple of weeks about creator royalties not being enforceable, and essentially you don't have to enforce it, right? As a trade, an exchange, and what we're seeing is people are leaving exchanges that are enforcing creator royalties and going to exchanges that aren't. And so some of the larger exchanges now that do support the creator royalties concept, they're saying, well, if we're losing market share to others that are not, we need to make this optional ourselves to not basically lose our position within the marketplace. And that's what I think prompted it with Magic Eden specifically.
That goes back to the conversation of DAO. Sorry to interrupt you. This goes back to what you said earlier, to setting the precedent correctly. So if the precedent, this is the creator's economy. So if you're telling me there's no royalty for the creator, that's the conversation to have. And it really goes back to setting these structures from the ground up correctly. however it takes, whatever it takes. This is a whole conversation to have, but sorry,
Yes.
go ahead. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it for sure is. Yeah, and I'd like to, we'll maybe shoot for this on our next episode as one of the
Yeah.
big topics. Again, it's been
Absolutely.
fairly recently breaking, and so want to get some more time to do some research and talk
Yeah.
with others in the space about it. But very
Same, yeah.
interesting occurrences.
Yeah, I'll hold my opinions for the next episode then, because this shit is fascinating. Yeah, I can't believe it makes no sense, but I'll hold my opinions.
We've got
Yeah,
a
you
lot
got
to
us all
talk about.
fired up at the end, bro.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, yo,
See,
that's the
this
yeah.
is this is giving the
Retention.
fans what they want. Exactly. This is the cliffhanger of the episode. So come
This
back and
is
join
the
us next
kicker
week,
at the
everyone.
end.
Yeah. All right.
And you just
That's-
gave us the kick.
That's how we
You have to come
roll.
back.
And
That's how he gets you back.
Yeah.
and I'll say this too, because Mona, I know you bring a big audience, and if you guys are unfamiliar with how we do things here at on Gaming on the Block, is we pose. I think this episode will be on your channel, Annie, or TSG, and then the next one will be on either mine or Annie's or TSG. We rotate.
It rotates.
Basically.
It rotates.
It rotates, exactly. Simple way to say it. And then we've got the highlights channel as well, Gaming on the Block's clips channel, link down below, where we take some of the highlights of each episode and like 5-minute videos or so, make it easier for you to get just the best parts. Now, we've got Mona's link down there, of course, as well. Make sure you check out her on Twitter and YouTube, because Mona, we were excited to get you on, and like we said, we've been talking about this like behind the scenes in the past to have you on the podcast. And man, I can only say that you crush it. I'm so glad with the dynamic that you bring to this team and what you brought here today. I got to be mostly ears today, which I'm so happy about, which makes me more confident that I'm in the right room, because I'm not the smartest person here, and I get to learn from all of you, and it's been so great. So great episode today, you guys. Once again, make sure you check out the Cliff channel down below. Make sure you subscribe to everybody's channel, and especially Mona, both on YouTube and on Twitter, because her content that she creates with a newscast kind of direction to it is very, very unique. And I love the way you put things together, and you're so professional and so well spoken on camera, and you bring a great addition to the space. So thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys in the next episode.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.